All right, we are live. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. I'm so excited to host this event for some of Mysterious Galaxy's legendary authors, longtime friends of the bookstore, and just all around awesome people. Welcome Dana, David, and Jonathan, and thank you all for attending. It is my honor to introduce Dana Fredsti, who is the author of many books, including the dark fantasy series Spawn of Lilith, and is co-author of the science fiction series that we are all here to celebrate tonight, Time Shards, co-written with her husband and fellow author, David Fitzgerald, who is also here. David is a historical researcher, an international public speaker, and an award-winning author of both genre fiction and historical nonfiction. His latest fiction, co-written with Dana, is the Time Shards series. And the book we're celebrating tonight is Tempus Fury, the third and final, I believe, installment. Moderating the event tonight is New York Times bestselling author Jonathan Maberry. Jonathan's works have been highly celebrated and are all-time favorites here at Mysterious Galaxy. His V-War series has been adapted by Netflix, and his work for Marvel Comics includes The Punisher, Wolverine, Doom War, Marvel Zombie Return, and Black Panther. So I'm so excited to have you all here to celebrate this timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly book event. Before I take off and let you all discuss this awesome book, just a quick rundown if this is anyone's first time watching on Crowdcast. To the right-hand side is our chat section. This is where you can kind of chat amongst yourselves and say hi. But don't put your questions in here. Make sure to put your questions in the Ask a Question button, which is right below here. Jonathan will be keeping an eye out on that and ask any questions that you might have for our authors tonight. And finally, make sure to check out the blue Purchase Books button, also right down here below. And you can check out all of the authors' titles here at Mysterious Galaxy. And remember to purchase, if you purchase with us, Mysterious Galaxy, this event, it will include a signed and personal book plate from Dana and David, and signed and personalized books from Jonathan. I think that's it. So I will go ahead and disappear and let you all take it away. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
And thank you. And thanks to Mysterious Galaxy, which is the new home of a lot of my writer friends, and that's kind of where in a way, how I met Dana and David, because Dana's been involved with Mysterious for a long time before I moved to California.
We love it.
I'm gonna jump right in because this is such a fun series. Without spoilers, can you give folks an idea of what Time Shards is about? And I know the reason I preface it so heavily is it is really difficult for writers to talk about their books without giving stuff away, because the stuff that we would want to give away or talk about is often the spoiler stuff, the really exciting bits. And even one of the first comment that was posted is, "Are we avoiding spoilers?" Yes, we are.
Yes.
And some of these folks will not have read the first two books yet. So
nobody hates spoilers worse than I do. So the fact that we're even admitting that's a third book is kind of a spoiler, but we'll live with it.
So give us a quick snapshot of the Time Shards trilogy, and what the hell did you guys do to the time stream, because you messed it up a lot.
We killed it.
We killed it.
You go.
Break it. So yeah, the log line for the series is the timeline shatters, and the world that our heroes find themselves in is a world that's made up from all the pieces that have been put back together. Only now over here it's 5 million BC. Over there it's 1776. Over here it's the Civil War. Over there it's the English Civil War. So there's just it has all the fun of a post-apocalyptic novel, all the fun of a time travel novel, all the work of a historical really researched book, and all the have to make it up yourself of a fiction book. So we've never written a book like this before, and it was really something else.
But it does also have a lot of gory deaths, like a horror novel, which makes me happy.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fun characters from all different places and times, and watching the way they get along and don't get along, and the way they work together, it was super fun to bring to life.
Now, can you guys talk about the event without giving again too much away? Because I mean, it is how it happens.
Yeah. Again, we find this right at the beginning paragraph of book 1. It just mentions that something has happened, there's been what we call a schizochronolinear catastrophe, which has broken the timeline. And the whole of book 1 basically involves these people who wake up one morning and find that their whole world is just gone. And now they're living in this jigsaw puzzle of all these different times thrown together. And they don't know if they're going to bump into, King Arthur's knight, a dinosaur, or a robot from the future just around the corner. And they do.
As far as the event, there's really no simple answer for that. And to tell you why there's no simple answer would be a spoiler. So
big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just go with
But basically-
I can't, that word that he made up. What does it? Say it?
Schizochronolinear.
That's the one.
Hashtag
Yes.
schizochronolinear.
Say it,
Sounds like-
Jonathan, say it.
Schizophrenic.
Oh,
It
Bingo.
sounds like something from Pirates of Penzance.
You're the very model of a schizochronolinear.
Exactly. That's exactly what was going through my head, which is a little freaky. So how did this novel get started? I mean, like did you guys wake up and, David rolls over and says, "Good morning, Schizophrenic," and then you rolled from there? How did you come to this idea? Because it's a pretty big idea.
Well, I will tell this story. We were driving home from Comic-Con 5 or 6 years ago. I don't remember which one. And Dave has done a lot of tabletop role playing as the world builder, the
GM.
the
DM,
GM,
the
yeah.
dungeon
And
master.
so he was telling me about an idea for one that he'd had. And basically it was, what would happen if the timeline shattered and it came back together in all these pieces and people then had to deal with it. And I got chills up the back of my spine, the hair in the back of my neck rose, all those cliches that actually do happen. And I was like, oh my God, we have to write this. And so when we got back home, we wrote a synopsis for it and the first 50 pages. And I turned it into my agent and said, what do you think? And she went, oh yeah. And that's what happened. I wish that it had been him waking up in the morning and calling me by that lovely pet name. But yeah.
Yeah, well, you have to name one of your cats that, because I know you're.
Schizo, come here, baby.
All our cats are already schizo, so we're
Sounds like
halfway.
they're calling me. Now, was Time Shards the series? Constructed or conceived as a trilogy, or how did it come
Definitely, yeah. We had a total arc of the story planned out in advance, and it's like anything. You make the trellis, and sometimes the actual horticulture changes here and there, but for the most part, it played out the way we saw it playing out.
Yeah, and we really did have a 3-book series in mind with it. We wanted to have each book have its own, complete satisfactory ending, and it's a trilogy. It's a trilogy in the same way that the original 3 Star Wars movies are.
Right.
Hand in Carbonite.
Right. You don't want to jump around. You want to read book 1, book 2, book 3.
Yeah.
Because the books jump around already. So I
Spoiler.
like what Publishers Weekly said. They said book 3 is a worthy successor. People who are new to this will be completely lost.
It does read very much like a trilogy, or even like a self-contained season of television.
Yeah, yeah. And we'd love to see that happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, we have a TV related question. Were you inspired by the Wedding and River Song episode of the new of Doctor Who?
Not at all. People have told us that Doctor Who fans will love this series, but and I'm not proud to admit this, but I've never actually seen an episode of Doctor Who.
Shh, you just lost your cred.
I
I
know.
can hear it
Yeah.
explode.
You may now leave the room, David.
Not deliberately, but it's just I've never had the chance to really get into the fandom. It's one of those things like Godfather that I feel like I know it already without having ever seen an episode.
Yeah.
But
It's a time commitment.
It is a time commitment.
I mean, there's only 50 years worth of shows. I mean, come on, don't be lazy about it.
I know.
It's on our short list. We definitely do want to get into it.
Yeah, I want to be able to argue about who the best Doctor Who is.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
And
there's plenty of time to catch up on Doctor Who. Says.
Now, with this project, I mean, David, you had the original idea. You told Dana, you got excited, but did you actually, immediately think this is a collaboration, or were you excited about an idea David was going to write? I mean,
No. I immediately sunk my little claws into that and said, I want to play in this world too.
yeah.
And it was just such a fantastic idea. So we pretty much immediately started plotting out the first book and talking about characters.
Yeah. And she brought some things to the table that I never would have thought of. Never would have thought of in a million years.
Most of the horrible deaths are mine. Yeah, that's true.
This does not surprise me. Not that you're all, necessarily a good guy who doesn't, who would be afraid of drawing blood, David, but
not my first rodeo. Yeah,
I do know Dana's thought process pretty well, and there's blood on the walls. So you have this idea. It's a great idea. You think it out as 3 books. There are a lot of different ways people collaborate. I've done a ton of collaborations over the years. I'm entering a 3-book collaboration now. Everyone seems to be a different model. How did you decide? First of all, how did you decide which model to use, and how did that work out? I mean, what was the process like?
Do you want me to go first?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, as far as the actual process went, the first book especially, we had 2 main characters, Cam, a first century Celt, and Amber, a 21st century girl from San Diego. And the first 2/3 of the book were primarily from their point of view with some interludes. So I took Amber, he took Cam, and we both wrote their journey until they actually intersect. And then we still went back and forth on chapters, and then we would read each other's work and smooth it over to try to give it one voice. And
it worked surprisingly well. I was really nervous about the thought of collaborating on a project like this. And it went fantastic. I was really stunned how well it went.
And I've collaborated on so many different things, from novels to theater companies to screenplays, that I just didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was going to be fine. I mean, I'm not going to say that there was never any arguments, but we are still married.
This is true.
So
yeah.
So given that, and I've had some collaborative moments, dramatic moments with people. How did you go through the process of resolving a disagreement about something in the story?
Honestly, I think our biggest disagreements weren't with each other, but with the editor. And
he's talking about what we were writing in the story.
Did we have any really major?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, did we?
Yeah, we did. What would happen is we would tend to go walking on the beach. There would be some, talking about it. We would each deliver impassioned reasons as to why our way should be the way. And
I do remember that.
Yeah, and then we would step away from it, and I think like in a couple of cases, I wrote it the way I saw it and said, this is what I see. What do you think? And that tended to work the best because then he could see it on paper. I'm not always very good at articulating how I see something or why I think it should be. It's always I just know I'm right. I can't tell you why I know I'm right, but I'm right. So,
and that we just muddled through it. That I don't remember ever having any really serious loggerheads with each other. Yeah.
No, well, we did, but I'm glad you forgot. I think it's actually kind of lovely that you forgot.
Ben Raymond asks, Ben wants to know if you write in the same room or separately.
Basically the same room on different laptops. We write when we can, wherever we are, and often that's in the same room with each other.
When we were in San Francisco, it was always in our living room. Sometimes we'd both sit on the couch. Other times I'd sit in my rocking chair. At our house in Eureka, we have our little upstairs middle room where we have rocking chairs and little desks and laptops. And sometimes, like in the book that I just finished, I spent a lot of time sitting in bed with my AlphaSpark word processor and a pillow, surrounded by cats, while he was in the other room listening to music
Or a lot of times I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and just have to write at that point.
So weird. So weird.
The great thing about laptops is you can write anywhere. And so we on airplanes, in coffee shops, you name it.
But getting up at 3 in the morning, I mean, I can't sleep sometimes, but getting up and actually doing something like that is just, that goes My blood, yeah.
It's proof that David is evil. I mean, I don't think we
Or not human or something. I'm not sure.
little bit
I
of
was
both.
also surrounded by a large stack of books at all time, like a pillow fort of library books.
Yeah, you're
all
lucky
the
there was
time.
not an earthquake, or you would be dead,
Totally.
buried in
Totally.
research. Buried in research.
One of the things I love about the series, and I just finished reading Tempus Fury. I love the series. I'm a history junkie, and I'm kind of a weird history junkie. So, what made you pick the historical eras that you picked, and who between you is the principal historian / researcher? Okay.
I would say, yeah, I was definitely the historian of the.
Well, he's a history major, and I've always really loved history, and a lot of the stuff I've read, both nonfiction and fiction, and the stuff I like to watch is historically based. Yeah. But when it came to research, I've never seen anyone go down so many useful rabbit holes as this man. I mean, I did not, when I first started writing, I didn't research. I just figured, make it up. It's fiction. And then I really learned the value and the danger of research, because it can be so much fun. But man, this guy, I mean, seriously, the amount of books that he would use for one project, for one chapter, it's like, what you're working, this is page 1 of chapter 20. Why do you need 20 books, honey? I don't know, but it's all right here. I mean, it's insane.
It really is addictive. The research process, when you're researching for a question over here, you'll find the answers to 3 other questions that you haven't even asked yet. And it's like, that has to go in the book, And
as far as the time periods, we both had time periods that we really, really liked, that we wanted to see in there, and incidents. And then
I was just going to say, especially in book 3, I don't want to mention any of them specifically because that would be a spoiler, but there's some really cool places that they get into in book 3. And I had such a blast jumping into those worlds and researching them.
And the first book, because it was set in the UK in mid-northern England, we just basically looked at all of the different places, and then, what happened here during all of this time? Let's pick a time period. Let's pick an incident.
Right.
That was really fun.
And that happened a lot. We would pick a place because we knew the story arc would take us, say, here. And then you'd find all these things you didn't realize about that place.
Yeah.
And it's funny, there's no sagging middle in the series. It's like book 1 starts out, and then book 2 gets bigger, and then book 3 gets bigger. There's a real expansion of it. And I just love all the places we go, and the characters we meet, and just their adventures and misadventures, and the people they run.
Speaking of those characters, I mean, there's a lot of great historical characters. Nellie Bly is my favorite. So,
I love Nellie.
Having picked the historical eras, did you pick the era because of the character, or the character because of the era, or are they sometimes separate decisions?
I think it's separate decisions, don't you?
Yeah. For instance, there were a couple of things in book 3 that I knew that it was going to happen at this particular place and time, and then I realized, but over here we could have this happening. Over here we could have this happening. And here's all the things we could throw into the mix here. And that was a blast. That was just an absolute blast.
I think book 1 has the fewest actual historical characters. Yeah. I mean, we kind of did like an amalgamation of the witch hunter.
Yeah, there's some real historical people from the English Civil War, some actual characters. And Nellie Bly, as you say.
Yeah. Nellie.
And I love her too. She's probably one of my favorite characters overall too.
Yeah, and she was so much fun to read.
Really well drawn too in the book.
Thank you.
So, again, without spoilers, for those who are attending this who have read the first 2 books, what can we expect in Tempus Fury?
More of the same. I mean, if you know, book 2 ends on kind of a cliff note because they're in a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
A cliff note.
Cliff note.
There were a lot of cliff
it's
notes.
very short. Yeah.
And they're in big trouble, and storms are brewing, and they have to get out of that. before rest of the book can move on. So
everything intensifies. I mean, all of the stuff that's happening, if you've read the first book, you kind of know what the stakes are. And then book 2, things become even more tense. And book 3, the whole countdown really starts happening.
Yeah.
You know, when are they going to get to 0 on the clock? So yeah, I do think that the whole thing just intensifies, and
it's super fun. I mean, I love book 1, but really it's my least favorite of the books because the story's just barely getting started with book 1. And
I love them all
3.
equally because I'm a good mother.
Yes.
Unlike you my favorite. So
Now, I mean, well, actually, before I go on, I just want to mention one thing to the audience. 2 different people have so far texted me questions. There is an option down at the screen that says ask a question. That's really where you should type in your questions. So, please feel free to do that. I will get to these questions that were texted to me in just a sec, but I'm hoping you guys put them in that little text bar. I know some folks may be watching on a cell phone and it's a little difficult, but, please post the questions there. Dennis Crosby asks, while researching and or writing, did any thoughts of spin-offs pop into your head? The question I was also doing. Dennis.
Well,
yeah,
it's physically impossible to write a trilogy of just 3 books in these days. But and there is some things that happen in book 3 that as we were writing it, we said, you know what? Here's a book right here. Just this throwaway line could be a whole book.
And I would just like to have other people play in that world. Like, who would you want to see in, Shard world? What would you want to do with it?
Yeah.
One of the first things we talked about before we even wrote the first book was, wouldn't it be fun to have an anthology? So
yeah. Oh, and it would.
Well,
yeah.
I had already thought of that. I was going to ask you about that. Because I can think of at least one moderately overgrown hairy writer who would like to write a Time Shard.
That would be a joy to us.
That would be lovely.
And we actually have 2 chapters from book 2 that had to be pulled because they were too long. And I mean,
they were too beautiful.
They were too beautiful for this world. That's right. But yeah, there was a lot of the like Napoleonic backstory for some of the characters in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Now,
it's very hard because I want to talk about everything in this book, and I don't want to talk about anything in this book. I want you to all be surprised by the things that we throw at you in book 2 and 3.
by the way, we have a couple of people asking about Dana getting more into the camera because we see this much of it. There we go.
Here we go.
Wait a second. Let me just move my chair. Otherwise, you're going to see me go whoop and fall down, which could be fun.
Thanks, Kathy Kravitz, for mentioning that again. Yes, that's. There we go.
Before the show started, we were doing lots of back and forth.
We need a bigger computer. This is like a little Mac Air, so like it's not quite as bad as our iPhones, but it kind of.
Gotcha. So when reading about the various historical elements that show up, you had me at dinosaurs. I mean,
yay!
I'm 63. I still collect rubber dinosaurs and buy books on dinosaurs. So I love dinosaurs.
It's like I'm looking in a mirror, Jonathan.
Yes. This is what you will become when you have a couple bad years ahead of you. So what are your personal favorite time displaced elements in the series?
Okay, Megalodon. What is the name of the giant crocodile?
Tsukasaurus.
Titanoboa. I mean, my favorite thing when I also was like, I want someone to die. I want a megalodon. I want to bring back these prehistoric beasts. I want to do bad things to people with these beasts because I love dinosaurs too, probably for different reasons. Yeah. Again, it's like, what could a T-Rex do?
And I remember one reviewer complaining about, all these dinosaurs in attacks, why do we have to do it? And they have to get to.
Yeah,
what the hell
exactly.
is your problem?
That reviewer should be horsewhipped, I'm just saying.
Right?
No, he should be thrown to the megalodon. I believe no half measures are necessary here. I loved all of that stuff, but I also love, one of my favorite movies, and the reason that I learned theatrical combat was The Three Musketeers and Four Musketeers that Richard Lester directed back in the 70s. And so, swashbucklers, roundheads, and
there's roundheads, there's swashbuckling, there's car chases, there's knights in training armor. Yeah, it's like everything. I love the thought of the reader asks themselves, who would I be in this world, because you could be anybody you wanted to be, really.
Or if you've ever thought, how would I deal with this situation if I, suddenly was zapped back in time to, pick a natural disaster or something else, how would you handle it? And sort of getting to recreate that for one of your characters.
Yeah.
But for me, really, Megalodon.
Megalodon, yeah, well, I'm a big fan. It's funny, Steve Alton, who wrote Meg,
Yes.
we shared an office together at Temple University years ago. Before he was writing novels, before I was, in the phys ed department. Go figure.
That is funny.
That 6 Degrees of Separation game, they need to rejink the rules just for you. Like the Kevin Bacon game, we need to play the Jonathan Maberry game, and I'd love to see how that fans out.
Yeah, well, that would be weird. Okay, so Tori Eldridge has a question. Hi, Tori. Also, a novelist and friend of Mysterious Galaxy, as is Dennis Crosby and others who are joining us here. Tori asks, after researching all these places and times, are there any you would like to visit for a while?
Ooh, there's some that I'm glad we don't live in, actually.
Triassic might be an issue. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
it would be a bit. There's lots of people I would love to meet.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I did my nonfiction book, I did a series about the origins of Christianity, and book 3 in that was showing all the different places where Christianity began. And I really loved the city of Alexandria and the city of Antioch. And Alexandria, more and more, I'm just fascinated by what an amazing place that was.
Now, I'm trying to think of the places in the book specifically.
Spoilers.
That's what I'm not going to say. I think the thing is that for me, I am enough of a 20th/21st century person that I am so spoiled by good hygiene and stuff like that. And I'm not sure how. I guess I'd have to pretend like I was going on a mega camping trip with really bad clothes or something. I don't know. That's a really good question, Tori, but I just don't know. I like writing about it better than I think I'd want to visit it.
And I'll tell you the most fun thing about writing about that. It's fun to imagine you are there. And we had a writer friend, Cindy Bidet, who told us, Cindy Gentry rather, who said she loved reading it because it felt like she was there in all these places we described. And that was just high praise to us. That warms my heart. But I loved getting in the heads of these characters and the things that they thought were important and the things they were afraid of and not afraid of. And just the way they interacted with each other was super fun to play with.
Which isn't exactly answering the question, but
a whole new question.
So speaking of books and reading and so on, people love Readalikes. So if they were to come in and go to Mysterious and get this series, which they should, what other books do you think they should walk out with if they're a fan of this genre?
Goodness, in this genre,
relatively.
Yeah, a big inspiration, in a way, for this kind of genre of time being all wonky would be Doctor Who, which I've never seen, of course, but it's definitely that. Time Storm by I'm blanking on the name of the author. Gordon Dixon, is it?
I think so.
And somebody when I was working on in 3/4 through book 2 came up and said, "Oh yeah, this sounds a lot like this story that this series that Arthur C. Clarke did with some co-writer called, what was it, Time Odyssey or something like that." So we're definitely not the first ones that have played with this idea of time being a jigsaw puzzle. But if you like time travel stories, and if you like apocalyptic stories, this is right in your sweet spot, I think.
Yeah, and they just put up Time Storm by Gordon R. Dixon as a link, so if anybody wants to grab that. I was also thinking the Riverworld books by Philip.
Oh, yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Brilliant mega Earth concept.
Yeah.
The mashup of characters. Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny that you mentioned that because those are my stepdad's favorite books in the world. And some of the only books that he's read over the last few years have been our Time Shards books, because he said they reminded him of that. And he he really, really loved them.
Yeah.
And I actually did those too.
And it's oddly, this doesn't sound like a Readalike, but it kind of does because it deals with time travel and other cultures. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. Reading Tempus Fury made me want to go and reread the Hitchhiker's Guide series because they're all over the place in time. They can go to the restaurant at the end of the universe. So that would be a fun one too, especially since Tempus Fury gets a little dark at times. Maybe I might want to go and read something a little lighter, but after the end of Tempus Fury, I felt like I needed a massage, a drink, and a puppy. It's like, whew,
Said the man that wrote Rage. I'm sorry. Traumatized so many readers.
We don't write books to give our characters good days. I'm just saying.
No,
This is true.
this is very true.
This is true.
Now I want to ask Dana a question. You had an interesting career prior to being a novelist. You were in one of my favorite B movies of all time, Army of Darkness. How the hell did you get involved? I don't think I've ever asked you this question. How did you get involved in doing B movies?
Well, when I said one of my favorite movies when I was young was The Three and the Four Musketeers. So I wanted to learn how to sword fight. So I was at a Renaissance fair, my first one, and I overheard a guy talking about how his sword partner had dropped out and now he couldn't do his fight. So I said, I'll do it. That started it. I got into a group of the sword fighting group that did Renaissance fairs, and we used to perform at Comic-Con regularly, like the halftime show. This is back when you didn't,
Ask her who she used to perform with when he was just 17 years old.
Oh, never mind.
No, you got to answer that question now.
Keegan-Michael Key was at the Michigan Renaissance Fair, and my ex and I did a show with him, and I didn't realize when we were watching Key and Peele, and I just was like, God, he looks so familiar. Oh, he kind of looks like Gabriel in Walking Dead. And then I was like, wait a minute, Keegan? It was the strangest moment of my life, and I had to call Brian and go, do you know who that is? He didn't know either. He didn't recognize him either. It was
because when they knew him, he had hair.
Yeah, when he was 17, he was just a little rugrat. Anyway, back to the original question, which was, so I learned how to sword fight. I got involved with the Academy of Theatrical Combat. They did the choreography for Army of Darkness. And so I was one of the sword fighting captains and one of the sword fighting Deadites on that show. So
cool.
Fun. All the Deadites were actually nubile young women.
Most of them,
Yeah.
about 85%, and some really skinny guys. So
Well, they did have to be, emaciated corpses with swords. Yeah. I one of these conventions, I'm going to have a conversation about you with Bruce Campbell. We started to have one.
He won't remember me. He won't remember me.
Yeah, he remembers the movie, and it'll be fun because he and I have met a few times. So I'll have to tell him that he was in a movie. He was in a movie with.
Oh, I triple dog dare you to put it that way too. And
I absolutely intend to. There's no chance I'm not going to phrase it that way.
She has told me that there was a scene where he watched her choreographing it with the other
we ran
player.
a fight with one of the soldiers that I was fighting with, and it was a really good fight, and the guy and I worked really well together. And when we got done running the rehearsal, we looked over and Bruce was standing there, and he just looked down at us and went and that was kind of like it's like getting you figure out your metaphor for
Insert
that.
metaphor here.
It was really cool. So
Well, to quote Bruce Campbell, groovy. So Dennis Crosby has another good question here. What are your favorite time travel or multiverse books, shows, or movies, and did any of them influence this story?
Oh, well, I loved Michael Moorcock as a kid, and he's like the king of the multiverse.
Time tunnel.
Literally just swapped an email with him 30 minutes ago.
This is what I'm saying, people. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Move over, Kevin Bacon.
It's going to be in the next issue of Weird Tales, so we're good.
For me, actually, I don't know who else might remember this show, but I'm going to assume that you will, Jonathan, because you were cool that way. Time Tunnel.
Irwin Allen, you kidding me?
Yeah. Time Tunnel. I loved that show as a kid, and I was so mad that it never ended with them getting back. It's just as far as I knew, these people were trapped running through for the rest of their lives. But yeah, that for me was actually my biggest
12 Monkeys I absolutely love and adore. I don't know if there's a direct correlation, but definitely that feeling of getting plucked into strange places and not knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
You know,
It shares some of the same grim urgency that you guys put in your books, and that's a good one. Also, on a much lighter Sliders to a degree.
Oh yeah.
To me, Time Shards is what Sliders would have been if they had a bigger budget.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So-
It did. I was going to say Time Bandits. It's also, getting thrown from one Napoleonic battlefield to mud-soaked Steen dungeons and whatnot. There's a lot of that going on too.
And I actually get the question that was texted to me about world building. World building is a real challenge and a definite skill set, often underappreciated by readers. Tell us about your process for developing your world building.
That is a fantastic question. We've set some rules right off the bat, and there was like physical rules we stuck to, and there were other laws of physics that we just threw out the window completely. And I think probably the biggest one we did was we were losing power.
We are losing power. Oh, no. Hang on, I'm going to try to get the other computer. You keep talking.
All right, I'll keep talking while we change the robot.
If they vanish because their computer goes out, they'll rejoin. So don't worry, folks.
Exactly. The biggest one we had was we locked everything geographically. So if you were in England, you might run into King Arthur. You might run into a caveman, a dinosaur, but you wouldn't run into a Japanese samurai because we didn't want to go just full on higgly-piggly with the jigsaw puzzle bit. And giving it corners like that really made things a lot more interesting for us because it really let us flesh out parts of history that we didn't know going into the story that we could draw upon. But once you start moving through, as the series progresses, we go to more and more places, and it was really fun to say, oh, well, while we're here, we can throw this in too, and this in here too.
Yeah. One of the fun things, because we live in a digital age, when I read a book or books like this series, I tend to jump over to Google and check on stuff because I'm constantly looking at new stuff, and I love that. I love finding out that you guys really did your homework on this.
Oh, I can't tell you how happy that makes me hear, and I've heard other people say that too. That the history really shows that we did our homework, and I'm so glad because we agonized over it on every single page of this series. There's some question, well, how much did, potatoes cost in 15th century England? How much, what kind of weapons, what words did they use? What things did they say? Had anybody had this idea yet? So I'm really, really glad to hear that you thought it passed the mustard too.
Yeah. It's one of those things that if I know they're going to mess with history and just reinvent it, that okay. But if it's supposed to be a collision of history, yeah. I want the writer to have done their homework, and I was very, very impressed with this. And it's actually the other thing it's made me want to do is go back and reread the Sharp novels by Bernard Cornwell.
Oh God,
because of the Napoleonic elements, and that's a series I need to go back and dive back into.
Hang on a second, not to interrupt, but I think I've discovered one of our technical glitches. Is that this is not plugged in. And
cool.
That doesn't help. That doesn't seem to help just yet.
Fingers crossed. Somebody mentioned Bill and Ted. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with is Dana able to answer a question?
Dana, she can hear us.
I'm just signing us in.
Okay.
Here.
So you've done two previous series before. One that's ongoing, which is the Lilith series.
Except book 3 just got turned in last night, just shortly after midnight.
Yes, and I remember Dana saying before we started that she's going 48 hours without sleep now.
We both are. Yes.
I know that feeling very well. Every writer on this chat knows that feeling really well right now. And the weird satisfaction of turning the book in and suddenly the stress is should be done, but it's still lingering in your system.
Yes, we're washing those toxins out of our system as we speak.
Okay.
So,
all right, we're bringing the computer over here through the magic of.
Okay.
Wow, look at that.
Wheelchairs.
Okay. Now what I've got a computer. Ah, that's very strange seeing myself there.
Whoa, hello.
Okay. You can ask me a question when I'm trying to figure this out.
And folks, they're up in Eureka, California, which is actually on a different planet, so the Wi-Fi is a little wonky. So thanks for hanging with us, guys. So again, Dana, you've done. They're gone. They're back.
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you've done a couple different series: the Lilith series, the Ashley Parker series, where I first met you. With those, they're open-ended series.
Okay,
Can you kill the sound on that one, baby?
Okay. Pause for technical difficulty. I feel like I should play some music to kind of get us through these
Let me
moments.
stop. Oh, hang on. No, turn that.
I think we're hearing them from the time continuum.
Oh my God, this is a timey-wimey moment.
Hey, if anything's going to go wrong, the best time for it to go wrong is on a live show.
Isn't it though? I feel like we're in book 3.
So while we're waiting for Dana to come back to her, and it's a better picture, by the way, so that's good. While we're waiting for Dana to come back, what have you been reading lately, David?
Besides history books, obsessively, I read Jeff Vandermeer's Southern Reach trilogy, and I'm reading Ted Chiang's short story book Exaltation, sorry. And I'm just so in awe of that man. He blows my mind. Can you kill the sound? Can you turn off the sound? Okay, so all right. So
It doesn't matter. Let's just go back over here.
All right.
Our computer may die, and I can't get another.
Well, if the
computer
computer dies,
our cats chewed through the
cord
here, so
which we discovered as we were setting up for this.
Yeah.
they have 10
Yeah.
kills.
So anyway, let's do this mad gay thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So Dana,
Okay.
you've done a couple of different series, and this is a trilogy. Do you have any intention, and this kind of plays an earlier question, of doing standalone novels set in the Time Shards world, but not necessarily with those characters?
I'd like to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the thought of doing an anthology where people can just play in our sandbox with whichever character they want is very exciting to us too.
Cool. Another texted question came in. Do you have any plans, not that we actually have control over this, but any plans to turn this into a board or video game?
That would be lovely. I mean, in a big way, if you like the game GURPS, Steve Jackson Games GURPS, that game system was a huge inspiration for this because one of the things I love about that game mechanics is that it's built to have characters from any scenario, from fantasy, Cthulhu, sci-fi, space opera, Indiana Jones. So it's made to blend and mix all these characters, and that was a huge thing. In fact, fun fact, a friend of mine who was running a game asked me for advice on how to do a Time Shards version of his D&D game, and that was fun to help him out with that.
Yeah, I think I actually role-playing game is the first thing that came to my mind with something like this.
Well, that's what the original thing was for, a role-playing game, was the original concept for it, so that makes sense.
Cool. Now, we are running a little short on time. We have still a few minutes left, but just in case your computer dies, where can people find you online? Where should they find you?
They can find me at www.danafredsti.com or zadi@aol.com or Dana Fredsti on Facebook or any other sort of versions of that on Instagram and Twitter. I can never remember my handles there. I think it's Zadi1 on both of them.
And for Zadi, it's Zhadi for those.
Yeah.
Right. Short for Scheherazade.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And mine is everybodylovesdave@gmail.com.
And you have a website now too.
And I have a website now, davefitzgerald.org.
And you're on Facebook.
I'm on Facebook, which basically our home away from home all the time. Oh, and Sue mentioned the Chronicles of St. Mary by Jodi Taylor. That I'm really waiting to dive into that series because it looks super fun.
Cool. Now, going back to just the concept of books, since we're all writers and we're being hosted by a virtual bookstore, What are some of the books that you return to that are old friends that you read every now and then? Like books that you must always have on your bookshelf? And I think we lost David and Dana. I think their computer died. Well, luckily they they vanished 8 seconds before the end of the actual interview, but they did have technical problems. They had apologized in advance that that might be an issue, and as you saw, it was an issue. They're not at their home at the moment, so they did the best they could. I'm glad we got them for 45 minutes, 44 minutes and 50 seconds.
That was a fascinating event. Thank you so much for hosting, and thank you, Dana and David. Even though you can't hear us right now, I hope you watch back and hear my thanks, because that was so fun to hear. And I honestly, I love history, so I thought all of the questions were fascinating. Thank you all so much for coming, for asking those great questions. And Jonathan, thank you so much for your wonderful moderator. I want to remind everybody you can purchase any book in the Time Shards series, including the first one. Oh, is Dana going to reconnect? She might not. I don't know. But please buy your books from Mysterious Galaxy. You will get a signed book plate from Dana and David. And if you want any of Jonathan Maberry's books, they will be signed and personalized as well. I think that's it. I think we lost them for sure.
And also, folks, Mysterious ships everywhere. So, no matter where you are, if you want a book, they keep a lot of signed books there. They have a lot of authors come by to do signings, and they can arrange book plates for authors. So when in doubt, go to an indie bookstore, and Mysterious Galaxy is one of the best.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you all so much for coming. Honestly, such a pleasure. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. And guys, this was wonderful. Take care.
Have a wonderful night, everybody.